The jobs bloodbath in the country is continuing with looming retrenchments, as we've just had in the banking sector, but also in the mining sector. Unemployment already stands at 27%, and the country cannot afford to shed more jobs. Of course, trade unions will tell you they have to protect the jobs. So what's the solution? What can business and unions actually do differently in this kind of climate? Well, to discuss this and help understand some of the dynamics in the labor space is consultant Tony Healy. Tony, good morning. Thank you very much for coming through.
Good morning.
It's a tough situation. Can we start with the banking one?
Yes.
We're waiting for a ruling. Well, the Labour Court will make it shortly at about 10 o'clock. Then we'll know how things will go. But the fact that we're here today is talking to this high risk that trade unions like SASBO have been highlighting of banks shedding jobs. I mean, and we know that our banking sector is such an important sector, and it's one of the best, we're told, in the world by so many different types of indices. This is not good, what's going on currently.
No, not at all. I think it's interesting, Dan, to note, if you look at the South African unemployment situation, it's 6 times higher than the global average. Last year, the United Nations reported that the global unemployment rate had dropped to 5%, which is the lowest in excess of 10 years. We know that the US, which is the biggest economy in the world, has its highest employment levels in decades. So South Africa is a unique example of especially high unemployment rates. And I think it's a function of a number of factors. And at the end of the day, it's really growth that creates jobs and avoids the potential for there to be.
And we've also had low investment in the economy currently.
Absolutely. So there are so many.
From domestic side and from foreign domestic.
That's quite right. So we don't have an environment which is conducive for job creation and job retention, and hence we're seeing these multiple retrenchment exercises across many sectors.
Yeah. Now, the banking sector is trying. Well, BUSA has gone to court now to say, no, let's try and not have the strike. But the workers are saying we don't want to lose jobs. Banks have been saying for some time now we're in the digitization space. There are new players who are coming on board who don't have infrastructure challenges like existing the Big Four. You know, they've got ATMs, they've got branches across the country, some of them even elsewhere on our continent. Now, how do you balance that interest of the banking business with the reality that somebody might be faced without a job and they might be the only breadwinner in their family?
Sure. Well, it has to do, I think, with the skills required, Dan. I mean, I think over time, you know, this is the 4th industrial revolution. You know, employment has grown through the first 3 industrial revolutions, and there's really no reason why it shouldn't continue to grow through the 4th industrial revolution if the skills required are matched by the skill supply.
And actually, isn't it interesting? I see a colleague of mine in the space, Sho Kamunga. I'm sure you know Sho. He says the irony. He's tweeted saying the irony of a planned bank strike is if it were to go ahead and customers feel minimal disruptions due to digital channels and online functions, the workers would have proved what they are striking against. Technology is irreversibly taking over. So you talk about skills. So should they be focusing, should unions like SASBO and them be focusing on upskilling their members to get on with it? I mean, everybody's talking about the buzzword now, 4th industrial revolution.
Yes. Look, I think that's right. I think we should spend more time on focusing on mechanisms and strategies to retain employment and to create employment, rather than on, for example, a strategy that says, how do we make retrenchment more difficult? The fact of the matter is that organizations do restructure over time. And if we could really grow our way out of this problem if we had greater certainty with regards to energy supply, greater certainty regarding government policy, the mining charter, et cetera, et cetera. Crime itself. The construction industry. Construction is an area that's been decimated, yet it's a highly labor-intensive industry.
So there are a number of factors at play here, but retention of skills involves skilling up. Does this apply to the mining industry? I mean, Sibanye Stillwater yesterday saying about 5,200 jobs are at risk at Marikana. AMCU coming out saying they're going to resist this. They haven't said how they're going to resist retrenchments, but Sibanye saying there's no growth. we can't afford it. We need to reduce the workforce.
Yes, I think the problem with mining, Dan, is that there's a two-edged sword. There's the rand dollar price, and then there's the gold price, for example, or the platinum price. So
and there's also the demand for resources.
Absolutely, and those are influenced globally. So the demand and how those interest rates work in favour or against the mines are really outside of the mine owner's control. And when it comes to automation in the mining industry, again, you can only go so far.
Now, from a union perspective, how do you resist retrenchments?
Well, Dan, it's in all honesty, it's difficult to resist them as such. What one can do is slow them down. What one can do as a union is perhaps reduce the number of originally envisaged retrenchments. But the fact of the matter is we have legislation that was agreed in NEDLAC that says for XYZ reason, as long as there's a valid reason and the employer follows a fair procedure, those retrenchments will be fair. So I think it's also arguable that the retrenchment laws are skewed in favour of employers to some degree, but we must remember that COSATU themselves agreed to the very legislation that they're now contesting, or AMCU are contesting with Sibanye.
Now, to soften the blow on some of those mine workers, I'm remembering a few years ago people were saying, let's reskill them into other things. I don't know if that's usable. And some people might say, okay, I'm now in my mid-50s, maybe I should take early retirement.
Well, I think the problem is we're living longer, we're living healthier lifestyles. Many just can't afford to retire at 65, and it's not unheard of for many to have second and third careers. And there's no reason why the more mature people in my age group, for example, can't relearn and reskill as necessary. It might be more difficult, but that really is the way forward. There really does need to be a reskilling to have a skill match between what's required and what's supplied in the labour market.
Tony, thank you very much as usual. That's labour consultant Tony Healy. Now